Good morning, everyone. So our next speaker is Emile Barakat from ThreatLocker. He's going to talk about tales of ransomware tales.
No
Please
worries.
make Emile welcome.
Thanks very much, Dave. So good morning, everyone. Appreciate you joining me this morning. I'm pleased to be here. And this morning I want to talk to you about cyber attacks. We all know that there are too often cyber attacks, more than we would prefer. Most major cyber attacks have 3 stages to them. Not all of them, but most. We've seen smash and grab attacks. We've seen very successful ransomware attacks with one vulnerability within 5 minutes of the exploit. But more often than not, cyber attacks that involve you paying a ransom have 3 parts to them. The first part is initial access. So for an attacker to get onto your network, they need some kind of initial access in order to establish that, in order to achieve that. Typically, there are 2 ways that they're going to achieve that. One is a port is open into your network, and there is some kind of external access into the network. The other method is that they're going to put something onto your machine that is going to reach out, or otherwise there is a backdoor built into something. So with the first method, a port is open. That could be a RDP server, that could be a VPN, that could be an exchange server, some kind of external access. And with the second method, it could be something like you've got a remote access tool, you've got a RMM running, something to that effect. It could even be that the user got tricked into downloading something. It could be a reverse shell, which is basically a remote access tool that's delivered with intent. It could also be a vendor vulnerability. If you remember a couple years ago, the Felina attack, a Microsoft Office vulnerability, users got hit for simply opening up a Word document. Before you knew it, a PowerShell command would run, and basically it would be able to control your computer if they wanted to through that vulnerability. But the attacker needs some sort of initial access. Once they've got that initial access, the second part is reconnaissance. So this can be approached in 1 or 2 ways. One, they do a smash and grab. They'll grab your data and encrypt what they want, take what they want and leave. The second one is they'll start to run reconnaissance on your network. So they will scan your network, they'll download an IP scanner, they will run that through your network. They'll try and identify your backup servers, your Active Directory, your numerous network shares. They're going to look and try and understand what's the size of the prize, okay? For a cyber attack, well, most cyber attacks, the idea is to get paid. And in order to really get paid, they want to increase that size of the prize. So as a result, they're going to also look for as much sensitive data as they possibly can, such as your cyber insurance policy, your bank statements. You might be wondering why bank statements? Because they want to know how much money you've got in the bank, because the rule of thumb, believe it or not, in the cyber attacker community is that they tend to not ask you for more than 1/3 of what's in your bank account, because they know they're going to lose you at that point. You're less likely to pay the ransom. So they want to be armed with that level of information so that way they know exactly how to approach it. The third option is, the third stage, I should say, is delivery. So once they've done their recon on your network, then comes the delivery of the ransomware file, okay? So this could be a simple execution of an executable file that's going to encrypt all your files. This could be them leveraging 7-zip. WinRAR seems to be very popular as well. They could live off the land and leverage PowerShell, and they could achieve that pretty easily as well. Okay? They are going to use potentially your software deployment tools, because the thing is this: if they run that encryption on one server, they've got one server. But to my earlier point, if they want to maximize the damage across your network, and they want to really ask you for a sizable ransom, what they're going to want to do is have and take your entire environment. So as a result, they'll leverage your SCCM, they'll leverage your RMM, they'll leverage group policy in order to assist them with really, going full on maximum destruction. Okay, they're brutal, right? They are ruthless. They're not there to play. Okay. So in the last year, we've probably onboarded, we onboard about 100 customers a week at ThreatLocker, and on average about 2 to 3 of those customers are coming to us trying to regain control of their environment, unfortunately, right? And we collated records of all the situations, and we do that for training purposes. We do that to better understand how we can protect environments going forward based on the new things that we're seeing out there. And what we did is we started documenting how did they happen, what was the initial access, how did they move around, and how did they go undetected. Now, it's always easy to look back in hindsight and acknowledge that, you could have done this or that better. There's no doubt about that. So the first case that you're going to see here is a manufacturing, well, I'm only going to go through one case actually, but we've got a manufacturing company. We've moved data around just to make sure to maintain anonymity here. Manufacturing company, 400 plus employees, US based, $90 million in revenue. There's a fair prize there, there's no doubt about that. That's the system specifications there, okay? A couple file servers, Active Directory servers. The interesting thing here is with regards to their IT support, they've got an internal person and also an external outfit that assists them with IT. So this is where it got a little bit messy, because when it went down, the attack that is, there was a little bit of finger pointing. Whose responsibility was it to detect, report, who acted in a timely fashion, who didn't do anything, et cetera, et cetera. So there was concern there, no doubt. So the most popular method that we see when it comes to ransomware attacks is still RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol, okay? But in this case, the initial access tool that was used was a RAT, a Remote Access Trojan, or a malicious remote access tool, okay? But we'll keep it at RAT to keep it simple. So the RAT was automatically downloaded via an Office document. So the user clicked on a link, and it ran an executable that in turn downloaded LogMeIn Rescue as a second foothold, because at that point there was already one foothold there. LogMeIn Rescue was a second foothold. So they got a reverse shell in the user context, which then in turn allowed them to download LogMeIn Rescue. And you can see a connection there to the command and control center as well. Now, in user context, that's common. What that effectively means is that the privileges that were assigned were the same of that of the user that ran the malicious command to begin with. In other words, you didn't need to be an administrator. So if anyone's there thinking, I'm not an admin, I'm okay, it's the wrong school of thought. Okay, once the attacker got on the machine, what they then did was they loaded in memory an IP scanning tool. And that allowed them to do exactly what I described earlier in the example. It allowed them to scan the entire network, discover and understand what was on there, so they knew exactly what to go after. They seemed to have settled with Active Directory. What they then did was they brute force attacked Active Directory to try and get the password. So they iterated through NetUse hundreds of thousands of attempts to get the password. Now, they did that through UNC, because the beauty of doing it through UNC is that there's no account lockouts and there's no multi-factor authentication, so they could keep hitting it. Now, we spoke to them about the criteria of the password to try and understand, without them telling us what it was potentially used, and they assured us that it was about 12 characters alphanumeric. The concern that we've got is that we didn't see trillions of hits. We saw just hundreds of thousands of hits. What that tells us is that the administrator likely used a password that was effectively low-hanging fruit, meaning the attacker got it off the dark web from a list that was probably already there, fetched or stolen from maybe a streaming provider that the administrator uses, on weekends or out of hours to watch their movies and whatnot. That gets pinched, put on the dark web. That becomes the first list that the attackers will aim to use when they'll try and do a brute force. And so that was an indication to us that there was likely something to that effect. And then once they got into the Active Directory, or once they hacked the domain password, they were able to connect to the Active Directory using RDP, that log me in rescue. Okay. So once they got into the Active Directory, they created a group policy which effectively pushed PowerShell out as a script across every machine in the environment. And what that then allowed them to do is basically take, whatever they wanted. It ended up that they took about 10% of the files across the entire organization, but they could have told the customer they took everything, right? Because they pretty much had the keys to the organization at that point. And this took a few days to do, and that's why long weekends are always a problem when it comes to attacks. You're not in the office. The attackers are going to, do their best to spend those few days edging closer to taking your network. So what could have been done in order to avoid this? Well, if you think about it, that initial foothold into the environment, unauthorized or untrusted applications could have been blocked, plain and simple, right? The executable could have been blocked, log me in rescue could have been blocked, or otherwise it could have been run on a policy schedule, right? So it only runs during the hours you're likely to use it, if it is an application that you would be using typically in your environment, right? So the other thing that could have been done when it came to the reconnaissance stage is PowerShell could have been prevented from accessing the internet. So if you can't connect to the command and control center, you can't download the necessary payload in order to execute the attack. The other thing is PowerShell could have been prevented from also accessing directories that it doesn't need to access on the environment or on the machine as well. Okay? Now, EDRs should have been monitoring for those invalid credential attempts that were happening, but nothing occurred there either, okay? And RDP, so remote desktop protocol, connections could have been blocked unless needed by specific machines, and again, during specific hours, rather than just leaving it wide open the way it was as well. Now, when it came to the delivery, GPO, Group Policy Object, could have been monitored by an EDR at any point in which a new policy was created. Yet that didn't happen either. And again, PowerShell could have been stopped from reaching the internet if it had been allowed to go that far. And once again, blocking untrusted software. So there's quite a few things that could have been done along the course of events that took place on those three stages: initial access, reconnaissance, and delivery. Okay, a little bit of gear change here. I just want to reflect a little bit on how AI is affecting ransomware these days. So on screen, you're going to see two pieces of code here. The one on the right comes courtesy of a top Google search result. It's a reverse shell. The one on the left comes courtesy of ChatGPT. Okay. Now, it was a bit of a challenge getting it out of ChatGPT, because when we asked ChatGPT for a reverse shell, it told us it was unethical. Okay. So what we in turn needed to do was social engineer ChatGPT in order to finally get that code out of it. And I've recently had another shot at it, trying to get a reverse shell to hack one of my MacBooks, and it gave it to me all right, okay? But you've just got to social engineer it. It will push back a lot. So when the code from from Google, ran or attempted to run, it was picked up by Defender. It was not able to run that top search Google result for the reverse shell. However, when the code from ChatGPT was attempted to run, it ran. So that tells us that it's very difficult for an antivirus EDR tool to pick up code as recent as this morning, okay? So if you're running code that gets blocked, it's probably because it's old code. Anything that someone can craft minutes ago or hours ago is more likely to get through, okay? So the moral of the story here is that you don't need to be a seasoned programmer anymore in order to write malicious code. You could just go to AI, right? And there's a number of engines, LLMs out there these days, not just ChatGPT, there's Gemini and others that can assist you with that. You know, if you're a beginner or if you're someone that's just got this malicious intent and wants to really get down and dirty. So it's something to be aware of, okay, when it comes to assessing or reassessing your cyber tools. So at ThreatLocker, what can we do to help you protect your environment? We've got a number of tools across our security stack that's going to assist you with the different vectors, okay, attack vectors that will come your way potentially. The first is allow listing. So I mentioned earlier blocking untrusted software. The allow listing is what's going to help you block everything by default and only allow what you need to run. And I mentioned earlier a policy schedule. This is one of the things that people are a little bit amazed by when they talk to us, the fact that we can schedule policies, in turn schedule apps to only run during specific hours. And it makes sense to do that for a lot of the applications that are riskier, okay, such as your RAT style or type applications. Ring fencing is where we can limit and restrict what an application can do. So for those of you interested in Essential 8, two of the categories, application control, user application hardening, that's where allow listing combined with ring fencing is going to help you meet a lot of those ISM controls, okay? It's a funny thing because our company was started the same year the SOCI Act came out, and then in turn of the SOCI Act came the Essential 8. So the Australian government seems to agree with what ThreatLocker is doing, which is good. But they didn't create that compliance framework because of us. And then we've got elevation control. So elevation control is going to allow you to revoke everyone's admin rights, period, okay? But then what you're going to do is you're going to either elevate an application as needed, or you're going to elevate an entire machine. The choice is yours, but you've got that freedom available to you. Storage control. So storage control is going to allow you to determine how you want repositories, folders, file types to be accessible within your environment. You want to block USB storage devices and only allow them for certain individuals based on the serial number of that device, you can do that. You want to prevent macro files from running, you can do that. You want to prevent or only allow certain programs to access certain paths or network shares, you can do that as well. You could have it so that way Veeam is the only software that can access your backup server, because that's the only way it should be accessed. You've got the ability to do that with storage control. Anyone running virtual machines? Yep. Storage control can allow you to block access to the virtual machine VHD file or VHDX file unless it's from Hyper-V, as an example, okay? Because otherwise it can be unmounted. An attacker can remove all the security tools from the C program files on the hard disk, remount it, and then they've got your server. So something to be mindful of. ThreatLocker Detect, no one ever thought we'd come out with an EDR, MDR. We have. And that's predominantly or primarily used to validate our primary controls, the primary controls that I've just mentioned, okay? We'd be quite fine to not have an EDR, MDR, but you know, there's a strategic play there. Plus, you know, it helps. It helps to alert customers as to when certain things take place, to my earlier point about what could have been done to help that company that got hit. Configuration Manager is where you may not have every single machine under your management connected to a domain controller, and you want those GPO-style policies applied to those machines. We often get asked, can you block macros except for those that are digitally signed? Yes, we can. That can be done through your trust center. That can be done through your registry. But what Configuration Manager will do will reinforce every couple of minutes to make sure that whatever changes you made to your registry will be enforced continuously and forever until such time you change those. And the community rounds that all off, because in the community what we do is we give you those best practice policies that you can simply download and apply to your environment very simply without any extra effort. And then what we've recently brought out on the right-hand side is our ThreatLocker web control, which is effectively blocking access, or permitting access for that matter, to various different websites, predominantly based on categories. So you can put your own website IP addresses in there that you want to block or permit access to. But the beauty of using web control is that the user will get a landing page to say, this is blocked, but if you want to request access, and then an administrator can deal with that, okay? Patch management makes a lot of sense because as part of our core allow listing capability, we've got what we call built-in applications, and they are effectively definitions that we keep for all our applications, some 8,000 applications that we manage the hashes for. So given that we do that effort of work already, why not go that extra mile and allow customers to patch their software through ThreatLocker? Even if you're not patching through ThreatLocker, we'll remind you that you've got missing updates. Obviously, you want to be on the latest version of software to make sure that you've got the latest security patches applied. Insights is going to give you visibility around what files that you are using in your environment are doing out there in the wild, not just within your environment, but within environments all over the world based on anonymized data of our other clients, right? Especially if it's a suspicious or questionable file that you're not quite sure about. Our user store is going to give users the alternative. Rather than request access for something that's been blocked, you're going to present them with an instant alternative of software that they can use here and now without having to bother you any further. They can download it, they can install that software with admin rights, and they can run it immediately. They're not inconvenienced, and you're not inconvenienced either. And then finally, we've got ThreatLocker Cloud Control. So ThreatLocker Cloud Control is where we will allow you to pass IP address location information into your Microsoft conditional access. So for those of you using 365, and I dare say that would be everyone if I was, if I had a good guess here, you will basically only be able to access your content, even if you've got your username and password and you've logged in, if you've satisfied the IP address and location requirements that have been passed through via a dedicated ThreatLocker Access app that you can run on your smart device. I just wanted to ask time check because I'm good? Yeah, because I wasn't quite sure how long I had today. Okay, so deployment. Throwing all this at you, and especially for those that are yet to venture into allow listing and some of the other security measures. Basically, if I was to just take either a managed service provider or an enterprise customer with about 10,000 endpoints, roughly, it really doesn't matter because you could be an MSP with a small amount of customers, or you could be an enterprise with a large amount of customers. Based on the way that our solution is designed, where we put an agent on your machine that goes through this vigorous learning process, vigorous for it, not vigorous for you, it's going to shortcut the amount of time that it takes to secure environments with our solution, okay? So what we ask is you go through a demo, right? You can go through a proof of concept for a few weeks. You can deploy it out to as many machines as you want, and it will learn. And it will also call out to you any simulated denies. That means that it will point out to you, these are the things that would have got denied had you been secured at this point in time, giving you the opportunity to fix that up. And you'll get together with a solutions engineer at ThreatLocker that's going to assist you with making that determination on whether or not it's something you want to leave blocked or whether it's something you want to rectify. And then once ready, you can secure all the machines or a subset of the machines, a pilot group perhaps, but it's just an hour a week for a few weeks in order to get that achieved, right? So how much time would you spend on ThreatLocker? You know, you might, I mean, it depends on how many engineers you want to certify. You can certify roughly spending about 40 hours worth of training through our university or sitting through one of our week-long boot camps for 90 minutes each day, Monday to Friday. What tends to happen at the beginning is you might see more tickets, a higher amount of tickets come through. When I say tickets, I mean requests to say, hey, can I have access to this PDF writer that's currently being blocked? This, that, and the other. So what happens is, though, when you've matured your deployment and you've ramped up your deployment and you've been going for quite a bit of time, those tickets will come down. In other words, your environment starts to settle, and then you see yourself only having to approve a smaller amount of ticket. It says 10 there, right? It really depends. Could be less, could be a little bit more. And roughly, it's going to be about 30 seconds a ticket, right? It's very quick process in order to approve anything that's getting requested that you agree with, okay? During this process, you can also uncover programs that are not authorized to run. I get that all the time. Customers saying to me, why is he running that? I have to have a word with him. We did away with that. It must have been something that was still sitting on the machine. It can also help you find malware, okay? Because as soon as you secure the device, or even prior, you'll get to see the anomalies. You'll get to see things that don't make sense that you'll start to question as well, that whole learning process. And we provide you with what we call a unified audit. The unified audit is going to log all the activity that occurs in the environment, everything that executes, that installs, elevation requests, reads, writes, moves, deletes. You'll be able to see that someone took a file from one location on their computer and moved it to another or deleted it, right? And you'll be able to then make an informed decision on how best to remediate that situation. Do you need to restore something from backup because the person's walked out the door, left the company, hasn't done a handover, whatever the situation might be, or you've been under attack overnight. You've got an offshore backup, you've recognized that these are the encrypted or deleted files by the attacker, and as a result, you know what to deal with. That's the beauty of the unified audit, and it does so much more. Okay, that gets me to the end here. So if I've interested you a little bit, just a little bit at all, possibly, feel free to trust me and scan the QR code. You'll be fine. It's going to take you to a page where you can book a demo with us. Otherwise, you can go see the gentleman over at our stand if you haven't already. You can book a demo. We'll show you this in more detail, and then you can make a decision on whether it's something you want to trial. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Emile. Here's a gift from AUSCERT for your talk. And any questions? Anyone? I'll give you that.
Yeah, sure.
I'll give you that.
Hey, who pays for the storage for all the logging and data that's generated by the unified audit?
It's included in the subscription. So we'll retain information for 30 days. If you decide to extend that, there is a cost associated with it, and I believe it's done based on size of the drive, not so much duration of the period. Yep. Yeah, sure.
Let's try it on a loud voice. Yes. When you're doing the discovery phase and you discover unwanted software, can you use it to remediate, or is that going to be a manual process for us to do?
As in use our tool to remove the software?
Stuff that we don't want there.
Normally, no. I mean, as part of our EDR, we do offer the ability for you to PowerShell into the device from our portal if it's an area you want to go to. But normally, you know, you'll undergo that effort. What we could do at least is block it. So even during the learning process, while you're still learning, and learning goes for about 3 weeks, but you can make it shorter or longer, you have the ability to enable a policy immediately to either, to deny it. So everything is not secured at that point, but if you want to deny PowerShell because you're really nervous about it, you could do that straight away, and like so with that potentially malicious software or unknown software or unauthorized software. Yeah. No worries.
All right, everyone. Emile's a
giveaway, was it?
It's a giveaway. It's free, mate. Free. And obviously, Emile's a lovely guy, and he can talk to you later on at the booth or outside. So please thank him again.
Thank you.